Hello, welcome to the Metatopia panel on porting analog games into Roll20 for Metatopia 2021. We're all excited to be here. We're all folks who have worked on Roll20 stuff in various different capacities and love to share our experiences with you. I'll start and then we'll go around the table. Let's all say our names and our pronouns and just a little touch of the Roll20 stuff that we've created because we're going to dive into it in much more detail as we go through. So I'm Sean Nittner. I use he, him pronouns. I work for Evil Hat Productions, and I, along with Sophie, who's I think I'm pointing at her in the screen, have moved a lot of Evil Hat products to Roll20 in the form of character sheets, modules, compendiums, art packs, token markers. Yeah, I think that's it. And we Evil Hat makes non-map based, non-grid based games. So a lot of our implementation of Roll20 has been to find ways that it can do like non-D&D style games. We've had a lot of success with that. And speaking of all that, Sophie, how about you?
Hi, I'm Sophie Lagace. I am the one with the accent. My pronouns are she and her, and I do freelance work, and I am putting together a bunch of modules for Evil Hat Productions. And other than that, I think you did give the list, so we're good.
How about you, Jenn? Oh, sorry.
I'm Jenn Martin. I use she, her pronouns. I work for Bully Pulpit Games. I created Fiasco in Roll20. I also worked on Ghost Court. I have an unpublished iteration of Winterhorn the LARP, which we're going to talk about later. And yeah, I've definitely done non-D&D style things in Roll20, basically only. So that's me. David?
Hey, I'm David Hemingway, he, him, and I am a Roll20 marketplace creator specializing in fantasy cartography. And I've also had the opportunity in the last 2 years to port a bunch of board games over to Roll20 for various companies, including Jenn Martin at Bully Pit. Yay, Ghost Court. I specialize in just taking their assets. I'm not a game designer, but I take their assets and I make it all work. And that's me. Back to you, Sean.
Nice. Thank you. Yeah, that is. You say that you summarize that very quickly, David. But like taking their assets and making it work, it's a whole thing. Like it's a whole ordeal. So and on that note, excellent segue. Thank you. So one of the things that we should want to talk about early on is determining what goes into Roll20. I think Roll20 would tell you that they don't try to emulate one for one the tabletop experience. There's things that work worse online, there's things that work better online, and they really encourage you to play to the strengths of the platform and try not to dwell too much in the negatives. Like page numbers don't necessarily mean anything in a Roll20 environment that's all hyperlinked or that is all journal entries or something like that. So there's lots of things that you don't necessarily need to have 100% fidelity to the physical product to make it a good digital virtual tabletop product. So let's talk a little bit about how we determine what elements go in, what elements we're going to incorporate, and how we're going to use the Roll20 features to emulate them. And let's just like zing it. Let's flip it around. So David, why don't you kind of go first?
So usually when I look at a board game that needs to come into Roll20's environment, the very basics have to be there. If there's a card deck, we're making card decks. If there's dice, we're making dice. If we're making custom dice, we're making custom dice that sit on the table as rollable objects. But some things that don't translate well are things that are more like, if it's your turn in a regular table space, you might have a marker that you pass to the next person. We don't need that because in Roll20 we have a turn order that we could just set up at the start of every game. So there's some things that can get left out. And on the flip side, there's some things that you might want in a digital space that you wouldn't need in a physical board game space, and that like timers can be a big thing. I know not a lot of games come with timers, but in this case, we have to make an animated graphic, a GIF that animates with a timer countdown, which I've done several times with some great success. And so, like even if there isn't a timer in the actual board game, I've had a game company ask me to make a timer just so that the space between play, since you're playing basically in a video format, you don't have all the physical cues of like, oh, is it my turn? You could set that timer to go off in like 15 seconds, and then that knows that space in between turns is now over, and that next person should go instead of having the over talk on the video chat, which can get quite hairy from time to time. Yeah, so the basics are there, but not everything needs to be involved.
That's not it's the space on the stove isn't that the issue. Okay.
Nice. Someone might need to mute. Jenn, I know we talked a lot about Fiasco in its development and well, Winterhorn and the other ones as well. And you had to, especially before dynamic cardbacks existed, you had to do some picking and choosing about what elements you wanted to present and how you wanted to use them. What were the what were the lessons learned there for you?
Yeah, so I think sort of for better or worse, a thing that you really need to focus on with Roll20 is understanding that you have very limited screen size, right? And you can't just have like 10 stacks of things up. People might be using like a small screen and they won't be able to see it. The sort of flip side of that is like you can have 50 card decks. It doesn't matter. This is what we did with Ghost Court, right? There's one card deck for each of the 30 cases, and you just turn them on and off as you need them. So like, yeah, understanding that you have effectively unlimited digital space, but also it needs to be presented in a way that people can use, right? It's not too visually cluttered.
Yeah. I remember that first game of Fiasco where I was producing it and you were playing in it, and I was literally just filling up every square inch of the playmat with like quotes from the game, and it was ridiculous. And that's not how you should play it, but it was just like this. Like, how do you squeeze it in this tiny spot? Sophie, I know you and I have talked a ton about, how should we represent this? And like for us, I remember rollable tables were like rollable table backgrounds were like. Moment where we realized we didn't need to have a zillion what are they called? Will you talk about it?
Pages.
That's it. Thank you.
I have to give credit where credit is due. I didn't grasp the possibilities of those rollable tables. And I think if I'm allowed, I would like to share my screen to show people what I'm talking about. Because if you're new to Roll20, or even if you've played, you may never have encountered this. So I will, as I talk, I will show. But I need to give credit to another company. I first saw this. When they're using a free module from Monty Cook game. And they were using it to, can people see my screen? Yes? Okay. Let's maximize and look at a game from Roll20. Sean, do I have permission to show things we're only teasing at this point?
Oh yeah, go for it.
Okay, so we're
not seeing the screen share, but that may be because I'm not sure I have it like popped out or something like that. Is everyone else seeing it?
Yes.
Yeah, you have to click on watch the stream to see it.
Oh yeah, thanks for me. My Discord noobness. Yeah, okay. And wonderful Metapia folks, Andy and Darren, can you confirm with us that it's popping up, that you're able to share it? I'm gonna assume so, unless you say no. But yes, go for it, Sophie.
Okay, so this is a module that is not released yet, but it will feature all the stretch goals, settings, adventures, playbooks, and rules that were met during the Kickstarter funding of Thirsty Sword Lesbians, which is really great, powered by the Apocalypse game. But I want to show you.
Sorry to
Yes,
interrupt. Just a heads up. I'm seeing from Twitch that they're not seeing it. So
they are not seeing it.
we are
Okay.
seeing it, but yes, you will have to paint the picture with your. Hold on. Darren is fixing it, so they'll get it soon. So
Okay.
yeah, so might be a moment. Thank you, Darren.
Give me the go ahead when. Oh, I heard a beep. Okay, thank you so much. I should have given a heads up earlier. So, if you haven't perused, I'm talking at the moment to primarily to creators who would like to use Roll20 to publish their own products, but some of it may be of interest to GMs too. So the collection tab of Roll20 when you're creating a module has, of course, your macros and your decks, which I'm sure Jenn is very, very tired of cards, but they have new features now, so we're happy. But rollable tables are these things here. If we try to create one, here's what it looks like. You add your items, you can put a picture, and you know what, in a name, and you can, if it's something that you roll on, you can alter the probability from if you're 1 to 4 on a d20, this is what you will get, so you would give it a greater weight. But that's how I knew it as a player. It was used to make random tables you would roll on, but there's a much greater use for a publisher because of the fact that there's that optional picture. So what we've done, and that's what I discovered from Monty Cook, is that you can in fact make the token rollable, look at every item, add a picture, and there's no size limit, so you can make it your whole screen background.
You want to show it off in action?
Yes, and you go to the map and background, or you go wherever you want, but we place them on the map and background. And if you right click on it, you get the multi-sided. It's considered a token right now. And as long as it's a token, you can transform tokens to graphics and vice versa. But as long as it's a token, I can choose a side. Let me make this a little bigger because the initial thumbnail is really thumbnail. And even so, I think that you may have trouble seeing it, but you can see that we have a slider here that we can use. Oh, this one I may have, may not be on a slider. This is a good example. Let the image resolve.
Give it a moment to render. Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing.
Yeah. Sorry, Sean?
No, I was just going to jump in and say, like, one of the hidden benefits of this is that not only that you have this slider where you can have different backgrounds, but if you've got the player, if you are using like tokens and you've got things on the foreground, it's a real pain to switch pages and have to like copy paste and reproduce all of that. And so what this lets you do is switch the background out without having to move everything. Not only does it have a real big conservation of pages, but it allows you to like leave all the players in place and then whoop, switch out the background. So it's just such like a switching pages can be. Not only do you have to switch the page, you got to drag the players over, and then again all their tokens. It just simplifies that in like so many ways. It's an incredible play experience.
The pages are very useful if you think in terms of D&D Pathfinder and so forth, where you explore a map and then the next map is something, it may be something completely different. It's a different scene, and you may not have the same parameters, the same wounds and all that. And you certainly often want to keep secrets from the players. So that's it. that's when you want to port them over from one to the other. But in the kind of games we were adapting, and as Sean mentioned at the beginning, it's largely the art is there to provide flavor, to provide a setting, but you're not moving on a map particularly. So you can see it with the slider. You can look at all the different settings. We have 21 settings in this, just that one page. And
you just happened to stumble on Queen Pins Queen, didn't you?
yeah, I stumbled.
Oops, 1 in 21 chance.
I just like that image a lot too. But they go with all the various settings that we explain in the handouts. So that's an example of things you can do with online, with a Roll20 powered game, that at the table would be different. You would pop a new image maybe on your screen or in a book, or put it. You've printed it and you put it on the table, so it fills the same function, but it acts very, very differently. I'm sorry, I spoke a long time, so I should pass the baton.
I was going to say, I want to add something here, in that I think a thing that was really helpful to me in sort of leveling up my Roll20 usage was just learning the lingo of Roll20.
Mhm.
Right? Rollable tokens, handouts, collections, journal, et cetera and so forth. Because I never would have thought, I could use rollable tokens for backgrounds, but actually it's perfect. Right. So.
Right.
Yeah, that is totally it. And in fact, the next thing we sort of wanted to talk about, which again, you're all brilliant at making segues, is all of these features. So one of the features we wanted to talk about was rollable tables, which Sophie, I think you covered that beautifully. The other ones, maybe we should have planned this, sort of pre-panel to see who's the experts on what. Jenn, I feel like you could speak to decks in a way that maybe the rest of us can't. But do you want to talk about some of the versatility that you can see in decks and things you can do with them?
Yeah. So again, like I said with Ghost Court, right? We had one deck each for all 30 of the case cards for Ghost Court. In Fiasco, we do it differently. It's one deck for each playset. But now that we can do dynamic card backs in Roll20, yay! I'm so excited about it. I love it so much. It opens up some things, right? Where previously maybe you had to use 2 decks if you wanted the fronts and the backs. Now they're together. But yeah, again, it's cool because you can have unlimited decks. You can organize them however you want. Really, the thing to remember with custom decks in Roll20 is if you need your cards to be in a specific order, maybe don't use decks. Use handouts, maybe. Yeah.
Jenn, was there ever a time when you made a deck? So there's an example of you took a physical deck and made it into a handout because it was better to just present it in order. Did it ever happen vice versa, where you took something that wasn't a deck before and then you turned it into a deck because the functionality worked for it?
I mean, I'm trying to think.
I think we did it with fate points, where you can have a deck of fate points. It's just an unlimited deck with 1 card in it. You could drag them out, and you could just use them. But I'm just wondering if.
Yeah. I've actually done that for a game port for Heroes of Barcadia, which is coming in December. They have a trap token that you can lay traps on the table for this dungeon crawl kind of board game. And instead of having a bunch of traps tokens on the table, I just made a deck of them and allow players to choose and pull as many as they want to the table whenever they want, and delete them as they go. So yeah, it's a good function.
Yeah. And then how many decks do you normally show? Because there's the difference of how many decks you have and how, you were talking about screen size. What's the ideal kind of number of decks on screen at a time?
It depends on how big you have the decks, because you can scale them, right? You can edit that setting and change them to be really tiny or bigger. I usually make them smaller because I'm working on a tiny 13-inch laptop. But yeah, I don't usually keep more than 3, maybe 4. But I really like to really only have 1 or 2 active at a time. And like with Fiasco, with the cards, you know, you display the playset deck and you don't need to show anything else. And once you hand out all those cards and you put them all on the table, you don't need the deck again. So you just hide it.
I think that is one of the coolest features. Is just being like, right now, this is the stage of the game where you use this deck, and then it goes away. The cards all stay. So you have the cards, they're on the playmat, they're in your hands, you keep them, but clear up the space. David, I'm going to kind of throw a wild card at you, which is that we have all these other talked about decks, we've talked about rollable tables, but there's things like token markers and macros, and art library. Any of those that you kind of want to elaborate on?
I've not come across any macros at all yet that were necessary for a game. I'm not very strong in macros. My art background really didn't bleed into technical stuff like that.
I will talk about macros then, because I've got a spot.
But yeah, as far as like token options, you know, like where you could drop it. I mean, that hasn't come up yet either. But I think it would be a great function for certain things. Like, oh, I'm now under this effect. My game piece is, and so now I can put this little effect on the thing. Also has not yet come up, but it's certainly a thing that is quite easy to do.
Yeah. I'll talk a little bit about macros. When we were designing the RPG safety toolkit, we took what you can do with macros is you can call an image to appear in chat. You can type a URL of an image to appear in chat. So we would have an X card macro, for instance, and you click it, and then it goes boom, giant X card that appears in the chat, and it's very visible to people. And that was, I mean, there's lots of uses for them, but the fact that they kind of allow some extension out, like without having to get to the API, because Roll20 has a whole API that's like another story. I don't even think we're gonna talk about it, but you need to have a pro account to use that. And so we want to make sure, all of our offerings were things that like everybody with just even a free account could use. And yeah, being able to call other images in has been super cool. I've liked that a lot.
Well, I know another interesting effect for Roll20's app is the dynamic lighting, which is not available for free users, but the other 2 tiers you can get it. So as long as the dungeon master, look at the world I live in. As long as the game master has access to dynamic lighting, I did a game port for a game where you needed to, or actually it was Monstrosity. I did a version of that you needed to have a hidden area where you draw your monster that no one else can see. And so what I did was set up dynamic lighting and assign tokens to players in those areas so that they can see the main board, but they can only see their own board because they're assigned to that token that's inside that. And when they're done, they just click and drag around their drawing and bring it up to the main table where everyone can see it at the end. So dynamic lighting is also a good function for games that you have to hide something from all the other players. Because you can hide cards, but you can't really hide stuff you're doing on the table. So
that's super smart.
Yeah.
Can the players just drag their tokens over into other players' areas?
No, they can't, because you can block them with dynamic lighting, and they can't do it.
Super smart.
Yeah, and so like if you're the GM of the game, if you're going to be the GM of the game, you have to have a little honesty and set yourself to player mode right after everything's set up, so that you're not cheating and looking at people's stuff.
Yeah.
But that's all about your friends. If they're cheaters, don't play with them.
So fair.
Yeah.
So a lot of these features, I think, were not intuitive to us as publishers and designers, but they're also not necessarily intuitive to the first-time user. Let's talk a little bit about the documentation that we create and the instructions that we create, or the videos, or the whatever we do to make it so that the first-time user who just bought this off the marketplace knows what to do. And Jen, I remember with Fiasco in particular, because of the Kickstarter, suddenly you went from 0 to 100, 0 to 5,000. I don't even know what the number was.
It was 650 cards.
Yeah. But also, I'm talking about users. You went from all these people who had never, suddenly gave out all these codes to hundreds, thousands of people that had never seen it before, and were getting, tons of questions, and I think you were iterating the module. So let's if I'm going out of order now, but do you want to talk a little bit about the documentation and the kind of instructions that you put into the
Yeah,
modules?
so I ended up making like a PDF, and it was a combination of instructions and screenshots, right? Because to people who are new to Roll20, They don't know that language yet. If I say change your page, they have no idea what I'm talking about. They don't know how to do that. And so as much as like screenshots can be like outdated or inelegant, you kind of have to show them where all the things are. And so that was really helpful. Like just having like handouts linked to each other so that they don't have to figure out which thing to do next. You just write text that says next and you click on the hyperlink, right? And I think the challenge with new Roll20 users is just getting them over that lingo sort of obstacle, and then empowering them to just play with it, right? There's no wrong way to play Fiasco in Roll20. You know, people are like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. Sure, you can. Just play with it. Delete the cards, move the cards, change the decks, do whatever you want. Like your campaign of Fiasco doesn't change anybody else's campaign of Fiasco. And so, yeah, I think one of the things that we're excited about with the next round of expansion packs is we have mini play sets coming out. And in the physical world, it's very easy to just shuffle 2 decks of cards together. But in Roll20, you cannot shuffle 2 decks of cards together. So we're working on instructions for the different ways you can do it, because you can do it different ways in Roll20, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That ability to combine stuff is awesome. And yeah, I think the lingo is just like always the hardest part. Well, what about you, David? You've got a lot of board games, and board games, like UI is the most important part of the element, right? Like if you don't know how to move the pieces around the table, and you don't know how to if you don't know how to physically play the game, and in Roll20 it's like digitally play the game, like you're stuck, right? What have you done to sort of, like, for instance, with the dynamic lighting, like let folks know how that works and what to do?
So for that game, we wrote up, working with Roll20, we wrote up a document that's inside the journal, and not only it's the game rules, but there's a document that says Roll20 tips and tricks, how to play this game, Roll20, and we would then just document, here's all the things that you might need to know. Here's how to drag your monster to the top. Here's a step-by-step instruction on how to do all those things. And then in other games, and I think I might have done it with Ghost Court as well, as like the game board itself actually has little instructions near the things that right click this to change this into this, or here's how you roll this custom die, right? So those can be embedded into the board, or they can just have a document on the side that helps new players walk in and go, oh, that now it's easy, because within that Roll20 document in the journal, we can put pictures to say, here's what it looks like when you do this, here's how you drag this to this. And so it becomes very intuitive for them very quickly if they have those tools at hand, like built into the game.
I know we've used the GM layer a couple times to have notes on the screen that only the GM sees. It's like, this is how you do this thing. When Sophie was just showing that rollable table, we have that like change background. We'll put that, sometimes we'll put things like that on the GM layer so that the GM's like, oh, I know how to do it, but it doesn't clutter it for the players. Sophie, you've written a lot of documentation on Roll20. Want to talk about the stuff that you've written up for, I don't know, Monster of the Week or any of the other bits?
One of the big things is for those players who need to learn the environment, we need to provide some scaffolding, because they don't know what they don't know. But I like to leverage as much as possible the plethora of helpful videos and documents that Roll20 themselves have put together, and they've got some very, very nice links for if you're a complete newcomer. And so that's the start for every module we produce. We have the links to those, because we don't want to redo the excellent job and it's also not prudent to give instructions on things that we don't have the power to control whether they change or not. But making it easy for people to find them is a really good first start. There's also some games that will have rules that will change the character sheet, for example, or that you will have. I'm sure you have that in a lot of board games. You have to track things. You need markers little tokens to track your progress on a chart. And when that happens, it's not fully handled. Oh my God, coffee is coming. He's the best husband ever.
Thank you, Edmund.
Thank you. But what was I talking about?
Coffee.
Before coffee.
I think you were on. You were talking a little about token markers and.
Oh yeah. So there are things that are necessary to show to everybody at the same time, and you can track them on your character sheet, for example, or we have the flexibility of for our own games to make character sheets that can track a lot of things, but not everybody's seeing it, and you lose that tabletop aspect. So we have to find a way to put it back in the system. Usually it's going to be a graphic that is going to be on the map background, and you can track on it. But where was I going with that? It's the coffee. It just threw me.
Maybe character sheets is my guess.
Oh yeah, it's actually we were talking about instructions. So when we write the rules on using those tracks, now I have to also add an insert to say it's on some box text to say on Roll20, here's how you do it. So it's not a direct translation of just like David was talking about making essentially a how-to document to go with the rules document, or documents plural because of those hyperlinks. We have to think as we put those rules in a handout. Is this clear? Can I do this? Do I have to, if I'm new to this?
Yeah, you have to read it like you're coming to it brand new, fresh, like you've never seen it before.
Yeah.
It's just hard to do when you've been
know,
spent so much
really
time
is.
in Roll20.
Yeah, you really have to kind of back out. Often Sophie and I will, one of us will design a module and the other one will review it, and we really, we're still deep immersed in it, so it's like it's hard to know for sure, but like we try to come at it from like, I don't know anything, I'm just clicking around on what I do. And Jen, you made a really good point that like you can't break it. Like one of the biggest things I want to encourage people to do is like delete shit, throw it away, resize it.
Yeah, like handouts. If you don't use it, just delete it.
Yeah, because you can always just make a new game with that marketplace module, and it'll start completely from scratch. So, when we were playing Alice is Missing, the setup for that was like it's very like intricate. And it's like to reset it, you can do this. I'm like, forget resetting it. I'm gonna play it once and then delete it, and then just make a new game because it's already all there, and I don't want to have to remove these things around because every game is different anyway. And so it's really like, I want people to feel empowered to like just wreck the modules because you can't hurt them really.
I think there's a built-in fear with digital stuff is that if you delete it, it's gone forever. Like it's just built into us. Like I lost my files. That's what everybody who uses a computer thinks. Like I'm done for. I've got nothing.
I feel like with Roll20, the people using it in ways that it wasn't necessarily intended to be used is how we get like rollable tokens, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what I've been doing on New Game is with dynamic card backs, I don't necessarily want a full, rectangular card on the back. I want a token on the back, and I can use transparent edge PNG files, and that's what I did. And so you have the card text on the front associated with the card or with the token on the back that you can just lay on the board, and it looks so slick and it's so good.
Right, you don't have to have the front and like it's not a physical card where you need to have the front and the back match. I've been recently sucked back into Magic Arena because I just basically needed something because my brain was on fire and I needed something mindless to do. And they have cards that are like flippable, and I don't even know what the physical card looks like anymore. But in Magic, it's like, oh, it's great because who cares? You only have to see what's present at the moment, and you can mouse over it and see the opposite. And Roll20 is the same way. Like you can have a card that's a token on the back and a card like anything. And cards don't have to look like cards. They can literally look any. Basically, they can look like any token. They could be characters. They could, like David, you were saying traps. They can be images. One of the things I do because I love the sound of my own voice, is I make videos. So whenever we make a Roll20 release, I make a little video of like, here's how you use it. And I specifically destroy things when I'm on it. I'm like, here I go. I don't like this. I'll delete it, just to try and encourage people. Like, it's fine. You don't need any of this. Like, or you at least you can always get it back. None of this is
Players can add, right? If you have like house content to your board game, you do house rules, right? Add a handout, add this, add that, like customize your stuff. It's not sacred. You don't have to have the pristine fiasco experience. The fiasco is fiasco. Like
it has to be kind of broken, yeah. Or not
We have
broken, but like a little wild. Yeah.
I want to shield
we
for
have a related
Roll20.
question.
Oh,
Yeah.
We have a related question where the viewer asks, with all of these cool hacks, are you ever concerned that they'll break if functionality of the program updates?
Well, that's a really good question. I think the answer is yes. They do occasionally break. We have had the every once in a while where, pages changed and suddenly like our macros, I think we've had like an image not load. Like we've definitely come along and had people be like, hey, this sheet is gone, or this, and we're like, we know it was there before and things are broken. My experience is that Roll20 is really, really great at patching things. So when you say like, hey, our module's busted, and you just tell them like what was wrong, they say, cool, fix it in the original one so that it's working now, and then tell us, and they'll update it. But have any of you run into updates that like caused more catastrophic issues or more problems?
No, I've not seen any, but then I'm on the different side of it where I'm just making the stuff and then I pass it along. So
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah.
Well, we work hard to stay within the limits also. Like, we try all the new features, but for example, we've made the choice to not use APIs. It was primarily for accessibility. We didn't want to force anyone to buy, a level of a tier that they wouldn't otherwise benefit from. But it does take care of a lot of those complex issues. Same with macros. We use macros, but we use them as a seasoning, not as a main course, right? So the primary tools, those cards, those rollable tables, those are very robust. I believe that Rollable Tables is going to get a bit of an upgrade, just like the decks just did, for some ease of use features. But my understanding is that the core engine is not gonna change, and it should not become broken. And if it is, I bet it'll be patched really quick.
yeah.
I was about to shill a little bit for Roll20 on a couple of fronts. One is use their tech support. If you are a creator, they have very good, very nice, dedicated people who will help you. If they can't help you themselves, they will get you to the right person. If it's a fundamental issue about how the way Roll20 works, that may not be something they can fix. But if you're trying to figure out how to do things, how to improve the way you're using it, if you have little foobars like the ones we were describing, they will be super quick and helpful. The email that they gave me to share on this panel is marketplace, all in one word, at roll20.net. It goes to two very lovely people who split the types of tasks between them. So depending what your issue is, you may talk to one or the other, but they are very helpful for creators. The other thing I wanted to shill about is when we were talking about breaking modules, the biggest encouragement for me to subscribe at a higher tier, even before I started making modules, is the Transmogrify tool that lets you pull elements from one game to another. So if you deleted something, you can go get it back from another game you had. And as a GM who likes to create a lot of different games, it was it was so very valuable. So this one's not for creator; it's for players. There is some great benefits if you can afford to subscribe at that level.
Yeah.
I was gonna say also if you subscribe. Sorry.
No. You go, please.
No, I was just going to say a thing they've started doing is if you have a pro membership, you can get a free game. I think it might be monthly.
Yes.
And so, yeah, so I got David's Monstrosity. I've gotten one that had dynamic lighting, and getting these free sort of modules or whatever has been super cool because I can play with them and see what other people are doing in Roll20.
It's in Roll20 Reserve, and so they also, like, you get maps, you get free maps, you get free tokens some months. So I've done a few of those. There's some maps, and Monstrosity is one of those. Yeah.
Yeah, and I use them as a GM. But it's also a good way to show your products, you know.
Jenn, you read my mind, or saw the next point I was going to look in the syllabus here, because I wanted to talk about what things we have found other places. Sophie, you had mentioned Bonnie Cook having the rollable tables and us pulling from that, and Jenn, I think that's 100% right. Like, I looked at Monstrosity and was like, ooh, David, some cool stuff there. Any other places that we have? Any other cool things we have found from other people's work, or other people that you should sort of keep an eye out on for the work? And I'm going to try and avoid this blaring.
It's like an angel
on me. I keep rotating the camera as like the sun keeps attacking me more and more. What about you, David? Any sources of inspiration you found from other creators?
No, and I think it's because I just work on a case-by-case scenario with contract work for different board game companies, and so what happens with that for me is that I have a problem to solve, and so I end up solving it in whatever way I feel is best for the game. And so I've picked up a lot of tricks in doing that, like making animated timers and doing rollable tokens and things embedded in the game board that wouldn't be normally in your physical space. So it's more about problem solving for me, where I come up with new tricks and find new ways to use card decks and tokens.
Oh, yeah. Those animated GIFs that you use for timers. That's something I hadn't thought of. So that's really cool. I'll go steal it. But in the same way,
one, and then Monstrosity also did one for them as well.
Yeah. And speaking of measuring time, Powered by the Apocalypse and Forged in the Dark games use clocks a lot, and I use them in Fate too. And I don't remember who it was, but we saw somebody had made clocks using those rollable tokens, and so that's it's another application.
Yeah, there's a really great Roll20 add-on. I'd have to pull up my account to see what it was, but we definitely got the idea from them. But they have really gorgeous clocks, and we're just like, we're gonna make those, and we ended up putting them, kind of throughout everywhere. It's been really nice. David and Jenn, I don't think you deal with character sheets much, right?
No, I don't.
Okay, so I want
lucky devils.
Yep.
Because this only applies to Sophie and I want to touch on this super briefly. Like, I don't want to dwell on it too much. Sophie, you want to talk about character sheets for a second? Or would you like me to? I kind of want to touch on it, but not focus too much. What do you think?
Go for it.
Okay. As shortly as I can, character sheets are probably one of the more they're definitely one of the most complex elements to program in Roll20, and there is definitely a lot of documentation out there on how to do it, and all the non-Roll20 created character sheets are on a GitHub repository where you can download them and see the code yourself. So there's a lot of material, but it doesn't matter how much instruction there's out there. It's a lot of work. So if you're a publisher and you're looking to, like, how do I get my module on Roll20? And not that I don't think you should do a character sheet. I think that's a really important element. If you have a game that needs a character sheet, like Fiasco doesn't need one, right? Or the Queen doesn't need one. But if you have a game that's like, we need to roll our stats and things like that. My basic two thoughts on it is, one, it's not where you need to start. People can make up kind of their own. They can make their own dice like you can make dice macros for rolling things, where you say, like, roll 2d6 plus and give them like an input bar where they can decide what they're going to roll, and like that's it for their PBTA. roles. And you can go on with making the module and the compendiums and the art packs without having to get to that. And two, if you want to dive in, it's a deep dive, and so I just recommend like putting aside the time for it. There's a lot to making it.
I will say though, I really like interacting with cool, slick character sheets in Roll20 because you can do things in Roll20 that you cannot do with a piece of paper, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't have to know
It
the
will
math to
calculate
type
everything
in the
for you.
dark. Yeah, I just click on the thing and I tell it the thing, and then it rolls for me.
Yeah.
But to get to that level, it takes us a certain level of programming skills. I've dove again for my own purposes into character sheet making, and I was thinking, I'm not ready to be a pro. I can do this much. That's good enough to make my game go. I don't have to think about all the other possibilities you could do with even just that game. But think once again about what you need to translate about your games. There are games that have fairly simple character sheets. You may be able to create that, but you may also be able to bypass it by using macros and tokens, like assigning character sheets to tokens, even if the character sheet is ugly, and assigning macros to tokens, which can be done separately. We did that in a game that didn't have a character sheet. We being on my side, not the evil hat side, and you can do it in a fairly slick way where, okay, you don't have a glossy character sheet, but if you select your character, a character's token, your character's token, any character, any token, if you're the GM, you can in fact assign roles that will look pretty slick, or other randomizers. So, you have workarounds but not if your game is very crunchy.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of room to explore like what works for you as a publisher, as a creator, that isn't gonna take. There's low hanging fruit, and I think modules, art packs. I wouldn't say low hanging fruit like it's easy, but you can just dive in and start doing it, and you learn as you go. And you won't have to like overcome this giant hurdle to get started.
No matter where you start, 6 months later, you'll look at your first work and think, oh, I need to redo this.
Yeah. David or Jen, do you use compendiums? Is that something you've added?
No, I don't think there's been a call for that. Like if I need to put a set of rules in, they can easily be done with just a series of handouts.
Right.
Yeah.
We did a compendium for Fiasco, but I prefer the handout because you don't have to tell a GM to enable it, right, to turn it on. And I think it's just friendlier to do a handout that you can click on show to players, and then everybody's where you're at.
Yeah, and I think another element of using a handout as well is that for text reader friendly mode, if you need, not everyone can read something graphically, and so what I've kind of started doing with porting board games over that, I make a handout of everything that's in the game that has words on it and store them in folders, and like here's all the cards, and if you need a text reader friendly version of that card, you can go click it and you'll be able to read it in the handout as well. Same with the rule books, like you'll get a graphic of the rules taken from the PDF of the game, but then below that everything is typed out as well.
Yeah.
So that everybody can read it. Yeah.
Both PDF version and typed version.
Like early on when I started doing these, I didn't realize that, maybe I should make that a thing. And so now it's like just a regular thing that has to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a huge element to it. And there's a WYSIWYG editor, kind of? Not really? No, it's you sort of have to know short markup, but it's simple markup, it's like star around it for italics, double star for bold. And then the link stuff, but there's a lot of documentation on the Roll20 side. All right, we have about a little more than 10 minutes left. I think we should talk about how to sell this stuff. Like how is a publisher to make things, whether you're publishing your own games, like because you're a game publisher, or like David, whether you're making maps that are like supplements for other people's games, like what's the best advice for putting stuff on the marketplace that you think will be attractive, be useful, be compelling, make sales. I don't know. I can't remember order anymore. Let's go around the horn the way we started. So Sophie, what do you think?
Oh, well, that's a question we've been discussing internally, right? How do we make our games sell? There's obviously, and I'm sure everybody will on this panel knows what I'm talking about. It's if it's pretty, if it looks good, have some really nice maps. The eye catching helps a lot, but it don't stay very long on the in the new items section. So having ways to boost that, one way is to have content regularly. If you come up with an art pack, a token set, a new module, and add on frequently, then your name, your company's name will appear more frequently in the new releases, and that's more chances that even if they don't buy that one, people will click and go see what else you have. Mm-hmm. And we found a lot of success in bundles that include a game in an art pack, for example, a token marker, a compendium. People feel they get more value when they get these things together, and usually it takes us more work, so that counts. That's overhead essentially. But the art assets are usually ready and can be repackaged. The HTML for the text, with some struggles, can be repackaged in a different format. So that's the big lessons I took.
What about you, Jenn? What did you find to make?
Yeah, I've got two actually, and one of them is just getting people to your Roll20 marketplace page is helpful, right? Because you're not always going to be on the new items spot or anything like that. And especially like with Fiasco on Roll20, if you don't know that Fiasco is on Roll20, you might never search for it, right? Mm-hmm. So having a newsletter, having social media, being able to put up YouTube videos of like how to do this is super helpful. The other thing, which is maybe counterintuitive, is when we first started with Fiasco in Roll20, we priced it really low because it was sort of an afterthought almost to the Kickstarter. And in doing a bunch of sort of market research and looking at how much people are pricing their things at, we realized how below market we really had gone. And actually, I think like pricing our stuff in line with other things in the marketplace has actually helped sales, which seems counterintuitive, but
yeah, it seems to be that the standing model is you book your Roll20. If you have a complete Roll20 package, that's everything you need to play the game, and that could be modules, art packs, compendiums, whatever it is that you need. It should be the same as the price as the game, and that's not. I think we're in the like, oh, the PDF is half the cost of the physical book, so that's maybe what Roll20 should be. But the Roll20 is so much more than just a PDF, right? It's so
you can play the whole game. It's not just reading a PDF.
Exactly. So yeah, we tend to go there. How about you, David? What have you found to affect people's interest?
I'll completely agree that if you can stay on a regular release schedule, which is really hard, especially if you're like a one-man show and you're doing your own thing, right? Like you have to do all the business side of it, you got to do all the creating side of it. And so if you can keep your stuff out there, every time I release a new pack, I notice that a lot of my other packs also sell well too. So that's definitely true. The pricing thing though, Jenn is correct. Like you really have to kind of look at the prices of what other people are doing. And I have sort of decided to raise my prices slightly. Like like some of them I'll go like $5.99 or $6.99, but I feel like the value of the type of work I do, I should probably treat myself with a little more respect and just let the chips fall where they may. But yeah, so like frequency for sure is a big thing. I think professionalism also helps. And I've seen some work on the marketplace that I can't even understand what the sentence structure was and what the description of the game was. Like, I know that not everybody is a copy editor, but maybe you have a cousin or maybe your sister's a copy editor. Like, try to run these things by someone before you type them into a place where people are going to read it and go, "Oh boy, I don't know about that."
Well, and that brings up a good point, which is that one of the things in Roll20 is that we don't control the marketplace.
Right.
We submit something to put on the marketplace, and then it's over there. It's kind of a black box for a publisher. And that's not a bad thing. I think Roll20 wants to have very strong controls over their product, but it means that if you made a typo, you've got to fix it and then tell Roll20, hey, can you patch my module? Or if you made a typo in the description, you've got to reach out to them and say, hey, whoops, my description, I messed up the markup, or there's a typo there. And the thing is, they're super willing to do that. Like, they want your products to look good too. They are like, oh, you have something that looks bad? That makes us look bad too. Like, we don't want your mistakes to prevail. We want them to look good. So if you do, if you didn't copy edit it and then you published it at midnight and then you look at it later and you go, what? That's not the one I meant.
There was a case where I forgot an asset in a map pack, and I realized it after someone contacted me on Twitter. It's like, I'm looking for this file in your new map set, and it's not there. I'm like, oh, well, hang on. And so they fix that too. Like, they'll drop things back in that were supposed to be there that you completely forgot because it was 2:30 a.m. and you were up trying to finish this thing.
Yeah. And something that's awesome. We've been told we have 5 minutes, so I'm going to give my last bit of selling advice, and then we'll roll out with our outros. My last thing that we've just started doing, and this was obviously very successful for Fiasco as well, is putting Roll20 modules into Kickstarters. Roll20 is very flexible. They have an agreement that essentially says you can't give it away, you can't sell it. Like, you still got to, you can discount it up to 30%, but you still got to sell it at a market rate. But I think a lot of folks want to know they get it all. They want to know they have the complete package. That means that's why I think people are drawn towards bundles, because they know they're not missing out on anything. But it's also a nice element in Kickstarter, which is that you can go like, cool, you can play this in person, you can play this online, you got the whole shebang. And it's really encouraged us to think about our games in terms of how we're going to publish them in virtual spaces. So I as much as you can, as you're developing games, just consider, you don't have to make it Roll20 compatible, but just consider, like, can I put this into a virtual space? Can I make this Roll20 in Roll20? And if so, make it part of your initial sales, right? Add that in, because that's, Kickstarter is the time you're going to get the most eyes on anything anyway. So use that as
some people might not want to buy like a full-on, $70 board game that they then have to pay $10 or $15 to ship. If I can back your Kickstarter and spend $15 or $20 to have a playable version of your game without shipping anything,
without adding more stuff to my shelves. I feel like we really, as a society, I mean, this is the evils of capitalism, right? But we really, as a society, have this big pressure to buy things more than we necessarily want to own things. It's like you get stuff in the mail, you're like, I backed this, what, and having digital assets is a really nice element of like, oh, I don't ever have to find a place to put this. I can use it anytime I want. Cool. Well, we have just a few minutes left, so let's go around again, and we'll go back around. So, David, starting with you. Who are you? Where do we find you? What are you up to these days? In a minute or less.
Yeah, David Hemenway. You can find fantasy cartography on Roll20's marketplace. Just search my name. I'm on Twitter at David Hemenway #1. Just the number one, not number one, but one. I am working on a new wilderness map pack that I hope to have done in the next week or two, hopefully. And I'm working on 2 new board games for a couple of companies. One, Heroes of Barcadia's Kickstarter stretch goals. I'm finishing that up for them. And a new company I met at Gen Con, which is yet to be determined, or yet to be announced, I should say. All right. And Jen.
Yep, I am Jenn Martin. You can find me on Twitter at 10penjen, 10penjen.com. I work for Bully Pulpit Games. The link might be to Bully Pulpit Games marketplace page, might be in the Twitch. I'm not totally sure. You can also just search Fiasco and we're there. Sophie?
I am on Twitter mainly to comment, not to post, so not very interesting, but I do have I'm not going to spell out the URL again. It's
right. No,
it's too long. But I'm at Evil Hat Production. You can reach me there if nowhere else. I am the digital content manager these days. And I have a blog. If you find my address online, it's probably linked. I'm there. I just have a weird address.
I'm going to pull it up, and I'm not sure if I can post links or not, but if I can, if I can't, maybe Darren, you can post this for us. But I don't want you to go unseen, Sophie. So I just dropped it in Twitch chat. I'm not sure if it has to get approved or.
Okay, you're in Twitch.
So,
No, not at all. It's fine.
awesome.
Thank you.
Yes, there you are. I'm Sean Nittner. I use he, him pronouns. I also work for Eagle Hat. I also work Big Bad Con, not related to this, but those are places you might find me. Basically, I'm everywhere I am is just Sean Nittner. I'm like the most boring person. I was just playing Magic, and I got on, and it's like the Zapperator, you know, I saw a monster, and I'm like Sean Nittner. You know, it's just like
Sean, hi.
and I think we are out of time. So we will wrap up there. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope that we have answered some questions. And please feel free to reach out to us on the various Twitters and spaces like that if you have other ideas after that. So thanks all.